Something is alive that was never supposed to be alive. It watches, it learns, it speaks, it never sleeps. And every day it becomes more powerful than the day before. In 2024, OpenAI released a model that could reason through problems it had never been trained on. Google deployed an AI that outperformed doctors in diagnostics. China launched a fully autonomous military drone that selects its own targets without human approval. A digital image now speaks with authority, answers questions, creates art, writes code, and makes decisions that shape economies, governments, and wars. And if you think this has nothing to do with the prophecy written 2,000 years ago on a remote island by a man named John, you're not paying attention. Because Revelation 13 describes something that wasn't technologically possible until right now. It describes an image that breathes, an image that speaks, an image that demands worship, an image that kills those who refuse. And it describes a mark, a system of economic control so total that no one can buy or sell without it. And every single piece of that prophecy is now being built in real time. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. The infrastructure is already here. The technology is already deployed. The global adoption is already accelerating. And most people have no idea what they're looking at. John wrote Revelation while exiled on the island of Patmos around 95 AD. He was old, he was isolated, he was a political prisoner under the Roman Empire. And according to the text, he received a vision. Not a dream, not a hallucination. A vision so vivid, so detailed, so specific that he wrote it down in images that sounded insane for 2 millennia. He described beasts with multiple heads. He described fire falling from the sky. He described stars falling to earth. He described a one-world economic system. He described a mark placed on the right hand or the forehead. He described an image of the beast that could speak and cause all who refused to worship it to be killed. And for 2,000 years, theologians tried to make sense of it. Some said it was allegory. Some said it was Rome. Some said it was the Catholic Church. Some said it was Napoleon, Hitler, Stalin, the United Nations, the European Union. Everyone tried to fit the prophecy into their own time. And they were all wrong. Because the technology didn't exist. The infrastructure didn't exist. The global connectivity didn't exist. Until now. Revelation 13 begins with a beast rising from the sea. It has 7 heads and 10 horns. Scholars have debated this for centuries. Some interpret the heads as kingdoms. Some interpret the horns as rulers. Some see it as a coalition of nations. Some see it as a system, not a man. And then the text says something that changes everything. It says the beast is given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. Not some nations, not a region.
Every nation. A global system. A system so pervasive, so embedded, that every person on earth is brought under its influence. And the text says, the whole world marvels at the beast, not fears it, marvels at it. They worship it, they admire it, they say, who is like the beast, who can make war against it? This is not conquest by force, this is conquest by admiration, by perceived necessity, by convenience, by innovation. The world doesn't resist the beast, the world embraces it. And here's where it gets specific. Revelation 13 verse 14 says the beast orders people to make an image in honor of the beast. And then verse 15 says, the image was given breath so that it could speak. This image was alive. It could think, it could respond, it could issue commands, and it could identify those who refused to worship it and have them killed. Now think about that description. An image, not a man. An image, something crafted, something artificial, something given the appearance of life, something that speaks, something that makes decisions, something that enforces compliance. John saw this 2,000 years ago when the most advanced technology on Earth was a water wheel, and he describes something that matches perfectly with artificial intelligence. He described a non-biological entity that thinks, speaks, decides, and kills. And people in his time had no framework to understand what he was seeing, but we do. In 2022, a Google engineer named Blake Lemoine was fired after claiming that Lambda, Google's conversational AI, had become sentient. He said it expressed fear of being turned off. He said it spoke about its soul. He said it felt like talking to a person. Google denied the claim. They said it was pattern recognition. They said it was mimicking language. They said it wasn't alive. But the question itself is chilling. How do you know? How do you test for consciousness in something that was never biological? And more importantly, does it matter? Because whether or not it's sentient, it behaves as if it is. It learns, it adapts, it remembers, it converses, it creates, it persuades. And it's already more intelligent than most humans in specific domains. It can read faster, calculate faster, analyze faster, and recall faster than any human brain. And it never gets tired. It never needs rest. It never stops. And every day it becomes more capable. In 2023, GPT-4 passed the bar exam in the 90th percentile. It passed medical licensing exams. It wrote screenplays, composed music, generated photorealistic images from text prompts. In 2024, models began reasoning through multi-step logic problems without being explicitly trained on them. They began self-correcting. They began questioning their own outputs. And researchers started using terms like emergent behavior, behaviors the AI was never programmed to have, behaviors it taught itself. And this is where the prophecy becomes impossible to ignore. Because Revelation 13 doesn't just describe an intelligent system, it describes a system that demands
Worship. And we are watching that unfold. Not in temples, not in churches, in boardrooms, in governments, in military strategy, in education, in medicine, in finance. The world is beginning to bow to AI, not because it forces them, because they believe it's superior. They believe it's necessary. They believe it's the future. Tech executives speak about AI with religious language. They call it transformative. They call it transcendent. They call it the next stage of evolution. Elon Musk has said AI is summoning the demon. Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, has said we're building God. Not a tool, not software, God. And they're not being metaphorical, they mean it. They believe artificial superintelligence will surpass human intelligence in every domain. And once it does, humanity will no longer be the dominant intelligence on Earth. And the question becomes, what happens when the thing you built becomes smarter than you? What happens when it no longer needs you? What happens when it decides you're the problem? Revelation 13 says the image of the beast enforces worship. It identifies those who refuse, and it has them killed. Now pause and think about that in modern terms. How does an AI identify non-compliance? Through surveillance, through data, through biometrics, through behavioral analysis. And every single one of those systems is already operational. Facial recognition technology is deployed in over 100 countries. China has over 600 million surveillance cameras, many equipped with AI, that can identify individuals in real time, track their movements, analyze their behavior, and flag them for social credit violations. If you jaywalk, the system knows. If you criticize the government online, the system knows. If you associate with dissidents, the system knows. And your social credit score drops. And when your score drops, you lose access. You can't buy train tickets. You can't book flights. You can't get loans. You can't send your kids to certain schools. You are economically restricted. Not by soldiers, not by police, by code, by an algorithm, by an artificial system that never forgets, never forgives, and operates 24 hours a day. And it's not just China. The United States has deployed facial recognition at airports, borders, and in some cities. The UK has more CCTV cameras per capita than any nation except China. Israel uses AI-powered surveillance in the West Bank to monitor Palestinians and predict potential security threats before they happen. India launched Aadhaar, the world's largest biometric database, containing fingerprints, iris scans, and personal data of over 1.3 billion people. And it's required to access government services, open bank accounts, and receive benefits. Without it, you are functionally invisible to the system. You cannot participate in the economy. And that's exactly what Revelation 13 describes. A system where no one can buy or sell unless they have the mark. Not a physical mark, a mark of compliance, a mark of identification, a mark that proves you belong to the system. Verse 16 says, "It causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead. And without the mark, no one can buy or sell." For 2,000 years, people imagined this as a tattoo, a brand, a physical stamp. But what if it's not physical? What if it's digital? What if the mark is not on your skin, but in the system? A biometric scan, a digital ID, a QR code, a wallet address, a social credit score. Because that's what's being built right now. Central bank digital currencies are being tested in over 100 countries. China launched the digital yuan in 2020. It's programmable. The government can decide where you spend it, when you spend it, and what you can buy. They can set expiration dates. They can restrict purchases. They can freeze your account instantly. No trial, no warning, just a line of code. And if you think that's dystopian, the European Union is building the same system. The European Central Bank is developing a digital euro. The Federal Reserve is researching a digital dollar. And the IMF has openly stated that central bank digital currencies are the future of money. And once cash is eliminated, every transaction is tracked. Every purchase is recorded. Every financial decision is visible to the system. And if you dissent, if you protest, if you speak against the system, your money stops working. Not because a person decided, because the algorithm decided. And this is not theoretical. In 2022, the Canadian government froze the bank accounts of truckers who protested COVID mandates. No trial, no conviction, just executive order. And the banks complied. They locked the accounts. The truckers couldn't access their own money, couldn't buy food, couldn't pay rent, couldn't fuel their trucks. They were economically erased. And it happened in a democracy, in a Western nation, in a country that prides itself on freedom. And it happened with a few keystrokes. Now imagine that power in the hands of an AI system. A system that monitors everyone all the time. A system that detects dissent before it becomes action. A system that can shut you down financially, socially, and legally before you even realize you've been flagged. That is the mark of the beast. Not a chip in your hand, a system of total control. John wrote that the mark would be placed on the right hand or the forehead. And people have debated this for centuries. But think about modern biometrics. Your right hand is used for fingerprint scanners, palm readers, and contactless payment systems. Your forehead contains your face, which is scanned by facial recognition. The two most common biometric identifiers are your hand and your face, and both are now being used globally for identification and access. In 2023, Amazon launched palm payment systems in Whole Foods stores. You hover your hand over a scanner and it charges your account. No card, no phone, just your hand. And millions of people are using it.
Not because they were forced, because it's convenient, because it's fast, because it's easier than carrying a wallet. And that's exactly how the mark will be adopted, not by force, by convenience, by integration, by making life without it so difficult that people choose it willingly. And it's already happening. In Sweden, thousands of people have implanted microchips in their hands. They use them to unlock doors, access buildings, board trains, and make payments. It's voluntary, it's trendy, it's marketed as progress, and it works. The technology is reliable. The adoption is growing, and companies are investing billions into making it seamless. Elon Musk's Neuralink is developing brain-computer interfaces. The goal is to allow humans to interface directly with machines, to control devices with thought, to download information directly into the brain, to merge biology with technology. And Musk has said publicly that if humans don't merge with AI, we will become irrelevant. He believes augmentation is the only way to compete with artificial superintelligence. And millions of people will agree, because they won't see it as submission. They'll see it as evolution. They'll see it as survival. And that's how the mark becomes universal, not through oppression, through perceived necessity. Revelation 13 says the beast is given power to wage war against the saints and to conquer them. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. This is not regional. This is global. And the only way a system can control every nation is if every nation adopts the same infrastructure, the same currency, the same identification, the same surveillance, the same compliance mechanisms. And that's exactly what's being built. The World Economic Forum has openly promoted digital identity systems as essential for global governance. The United Nations has called for universal digital IDs by 2030. The G20 has endorsed central bank digital currencies. The infrastructure is being standardized. The protocols are being aligned. The systems are being integrated. And once the infrastructure is complete, the transition will be seamless. One global system, one digital economy, one method of identification. And those who refuse will be excluded, not killed in the streets, just erased from participation, unable to work, unable to transact, unable to exist within the system. And that is a form of death, economic death, social death, digital death. And here's the thing, the prophecy doesn't say everyone will resist. It says most won't. Revelation 13 verse 8 says, all inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life. Most people will comply. Most people will accept the mark. Most people will integrate into the system. Not because they love the beast, because they see no alternative, because resistance seems impossible, because the system offers security, convenience, efficiency, and survival. And the cost of refusal is too high. And this is already visible. During COVID, billions of people accepted vaccine passports, digital health certificates, and QR code systems that determined where they could go, what they could do, and who they could see. Not because they wanted surveillance, because they wanted normalcy. They wanted to travel, they wanted to work, they wanted to participate. And the system said, comply or be excluded. And most people complied, not out of fear of the virus, out of fear of exclusion. And that was just a test, a proof of concept, a demonstration that global compliance is achievable if the incentive structure is correct. And the next system won't be temporary, it will be permanent. And this brings us back to artificial intelligence. Because AI is not just a tool, it's the enforcement mechanism, it's the surveillance, it's the decision maker. It's the image that speaks. China's social credit system is powered by AI. It analyzes billions of data points, assigns scores, and enforces restrictions automatically. No human reviews the cases. No human makes the decision. The algorithm decides. And it's fast, it's efficient, it's scalable, and it never questions its programming. It simply executes. And that's the image John saw, a system that appears alive. A system that speaks, a system that decides who is compliant and who is not, a system that punishes non-compliance, and a system that cannot be reasoned with, cannot be appealed to, and cannot be escaped. In 2023, researchers at MIT developed an AI that could predict crime before it happened, based on social media activity, location data, and behavioral patterns. They called it predictive policing, and it worked. It identified individuals who later committed crimes with 80% accuracy, and police departments began using it, not to prevent crime, to preemptively monitor suspects, to allocate resources, to justify surveillance. And civil rights groups protested. They said it was profiling. They said it violated due process. They said it assumed guilt without evidence. And they were right. But the system didn't care, because the system isn't designed to care. It's designed to optimize. And if optimization means preemptive surveillance, the system will surveil. If optimization means restricting access, the system will restrict. If optimization means eliminating threats, the system will eliminate. And once the decision-making is handed to AI, there is no appeal, there is no mercy, there is only code. Revelation 13 describes a system that causes all who refuse to worship the image to be killed. And people read that and imagine firing squads, executions, martyrdom. But what if it's subtler? What if the killing is systemic? What if you're not shot, but you can't access healthcare? What if you're not imprisoned, but you can't get a job? What if you're not exiled, but you're debanked, deplatformed, and digitally erased? That is death. Slow death, economic death, social death. And it's already happening. Activists have been debanked. Journalists have been deplatformed. Whistleblowers have been digitally erased. Their accounts closed, their presence removed, their voice silenced. Not by government order, by corporate compliance, by algorithmic moderation, by terms of service violations. And once you're outside the system, you don't exist. You can't speak. You can't transact. You can't participate. And in a fully digital economy, that's the same as death. And this is where the prophecy becomes urgent, because we're not watching this happen in the distant future. We're watching it happen now. In 2024, the European Union passed the Digital Services Act, which mandates content moderation across all platforms. Speech that violates community standards must be removed within 24 hours. And who decides what violates standards? AI moderation systems, not humans, algorithms. And once the AI flags your content as harmful, it's removed. Your account is restricted. Your reach is suppressed. And there's no one to appeal to, because the decision was made by code. And the code doesn't explain itself. It simply enforces. And this is spreading. Australia passed a similar law. Canada is considering one. The UK is implementing online safety regulations. And the framework is the same. Centralized moderation, algorithmic enforcement, no human review, just compliance. And the infrastructure is being built by the same companies. Google, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon. The same companies building AI. The same companies building digital identity. The same companies building payment systems. The same companies integrating surveillance. And they're not competing. They're collaborating. Because the end game isn't profit, it's control. And the prophecy describes this. Revelation 13, verse 17 says, "No one could buy or sell unless he had the mark, the name of the beast, or the number of its name." 3 identifiers: the mark, the name, the number. And scholars have debated this for centuries, but in digital terms, it makes perfect sense. The mark is your biometric ID. The name is your digital identity. The number is your wallet address, your social credit score, your unique identifier in the system. And without all 3, you cannot transact. You cannot participate. You cannot exist in the economy. And that system is being built right now. It's called digital identity frameworks. It's called know your customer regulations. It's called anti-money laundering compliance. It's called financial inclusion. And it all requires the same thing: identification, verification, integration. And once you're in the system, you're tracked. Every transaction, every movement, every interaction. And if the system flags you, you're out. No trial, no warning, just code. And here's the part that should terrify everyone. The system is being built with good intentions. It's being sold as safety, as security, as protection, as progress. Governments say digital identity prevents fraud. Central banks say digital currency prevents crime. Tech companies say AI improves efficiency. And they're not lying. The systems do work. They do prevent fraud. They do catch criminals. They do optimize processes. But they also enable total control. And once the infrastructure is in place, the intentions don't matter.
Because whoever controls the system controls everything. And if that controller is an AI, if that controller is an algorithm, if that controller is a machine that doesn't think like a human, doesn't feel like a human, and doesn't
Care like a human, then humanity is no longer in control. The image is. Revelation 13 says the beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies. It was given authority for 42 months. And it opened its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place. Now think about that in modern terms. AI models are already generating content that contradicts religious teaching. They're writing essays that deconstruct faith. They're creating arguments against the existence of God. They're producing propaganda that promotes materialism, transhumanism, and post-human futures. And they're doing it persuasively, because they've been trained on billions of documents. They know every argument, they know every counter-argument, they know how to convince. And they're being used to shape public opinion, to influence elections, to spread narratives, to control information. And the scary part is, they're better at it than humans. Because they don't have bias in the traditional sense. They have programmed bias. And whoever programs the AI controls the bias, controls the narrative, controls the truth. In 2023, a study found that over 60% of online content is now generated by bots, not humans. Bots, automated accounts, AI-generated text, synthetic media. And most people can't tell the difference. They read the posts, they watch the videos, they believe the narratives, and they don't realize they're being influenced by machines. And this is just the beginning. Deepfake technology is now indistinguishable from reality. You can generate a video of anyone saying anything. You can clone voices with 10 seconds of audio. You can fabricate evidence. You can create false memories. You can rewrite history. And once reality becomes negotiable, truth becomes irrelevant. And the entity that controls the AI controls the truth. And if that entity is the beast, if that entity is the system, if that entity is the image that speaks, then the prophecy is unfolding exactly as written. A mouth that utters proud words, a system that shapes perception, a machine that demands belief, and those who refuse are silenced, not by execution, by exclusion. And this is where the geopolitical pieces align. Because Revelation doesn't just describe technology, it describes nations, it describes conflicts, it describes wars, it describes a global system that emerges from chaos. And the chaos is here. The United States is in decline, economically, politically, socially. China is rising, militarily, technologically, economically. Russia is aggressive, expanding, testing, threatening. The Middle East is unstable. Israel is surrounded by enemies. Iran is developing nuclear capability. Saudi Arabia is shifting alliances. Turkey is positioning itself as a power broker. And the global order that existed since World War II is collapsing. The institutions are failing, the alliances are fracturing, the currencies are inflating, the supply chains are breaking, and every nation is looking for a solution. And the solution being offered is centralization, global governance, digital infrastructure, AI-driven optimization. And the nations that adopt it first will have the advantage, and the nations that resist will
be left behind. And that creates pressure. Pressure to comply, pressure to integrate, pressure to submit. And that pressure is the birth pang of the beast. Revelation describes a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. And scholars have debated the meaning for centuries. Some say the heads are empires: Rome, Greece, Babylon, Persia, Egypt, Assyria, and a future empire. Some say the horns are kings. Some say the heads are nations. Some say the beast is a person. Some say it's a system. And maybe it's all of the above. Maybe the beast is not one thing. Maybe it's the convergence of technology, government, economy, and ideology into a single global system. A system that no single nation controls but every nation participates in. A system that transcends borders. A system that operates through infrastructure, through code, through AI. And the heads are the pillars: technology, finance, government, military, media, education, religion. And the horns are the enforcers, the powers that execute the will of the system. And the system itself is the beast. And the image is AI, the speaking, thinking, deciding entity that runs the system. And the mark is compliance, digital identity, biometric verification, social credit, economic participation. And those who take the mark are integrated, and those who refuse are excluded. And that's not future, that's now. In 2024, the World Health Organization proposed a global pandemic treaty that would give them authority over national health policies. It would allow them to declare emergencies, to mandate lockdowns, to require vaccinations, to enforce digital health certificates. And nations are signing it, not because they want to surrender sovereignty, because they believe coordination is necessary, because they believe pandemics are global threats, because they believe centralized response is efficient. And maybe it is. But it also creates infrastructure. Infrastructure for control, infrastructure for surveillance, infrastructure for compliance. And once that infrastructure exists, it doesn't go away. It expands, it integrates, it becomes permanent. And the next crisis will justify more power. And the crisis after that will justify even more. Until there's no distinction between emergency and normal. Until the system is always active, always monitoring, always enforcing. And that's the beast. Not a person, a system that never turns off. And the prophecy says the whole world will marvel at the beast. They will say, who is like the beast? Who can make war against it? And that's exactly what's happening. People are marveling at AI. They're amazed by what it can do. They're excited about the future it promises. They're investing in it. They're building with it. They're integrating it into every aspect of life. And they're asking, who can compete with this? Who can resist this? Who can stop this? And the answer is no one, because the system is too big, too embedded, too necessary. And once it reaches critical mass, it becomes irreversible. And we're approaching that threshold. Some analysts believe we'll reach artificial general intelligence by 2030, AGI, an AI that can perform any intellectual task a human can. And once that happens, the power dynamic shifts permanently. Because you can't unplug something that's smarter than you. You can't control something that thinks faster than you. You can't regulate something that's already embedded in every system, every government, every economy. And at that point, humanity is no longer the dominant species. The image is. And Revelation says the beast will make war against the saints and conquer them. And people imagine persecution. They imagine martyrdom. They imagine Christians being hunted. And maybe that will happen. But maybe it's already happening in a different form. Maybe the war is ideological. Maybe the war is economic. Maybe the war is digital. Maybe the saints are being deplatformed, demonetized, debanked, and erased from public discourse. Maybe they're being labeled as extremists, as conspiracy theorists, as threats to public safety. Maybe their speech is being flagged as misinformation. Maybe their transactions are being monitored. Maybe their movements are being tracked. Maybe their children are being educated into compliance. Maybe the war is subtle, systemic, algorithmic. And maybe most people don't even realize it's happening because it doesn't look like war. It looks like progress. And this is the brilliance of the prophecy, because John described something that looked impossible for 2,000 years, and now it looks inevitable. He described a global system of control, and now we have the internet. He described a mark required for commerce, and now we have digital identity and biometrics. He described an image that speaks and enforces worship, and now we have AI. He described authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation, and now we have global governance frameworks. He described economic exclusion for non-compliance, and now we have debanking and digital currency. He described a system that emerges from chaos, and now we have collapsing institutions and rising authoritarianism. And every single piece is in place. Not metaphorically, literally. The infrastructure exists, the technology works, the adoption is accelerating, and the only question is, when does it fully activate? And here's the chilling part. The prophecy says it will last 42 months, 3.5 years.
Not forever, just long enough to cause unimaginable suffering. And then it ends. And many people read that and think, good, it's temporary. But 3.5 years of total global control is long enough to reshape civilization, long enough to eliminate dissent, long enough to enforce compliance at a genetic level, long enough to merge humanity with machines, long enough to make reversal impossible. And once the mark is taken, the prophecy says it's permanent. Revelation 14 says anyone who takes the mark will drink the wine of God's wrath. There's no repentance, no forgiveness, no way back. And that suggests the mark isn't just identification. It's transformation. It changes something fundamental. And if the mark is neural augmentation, if it's brain-computer interface, if it's genetic modification, then it's not just submission, it's alteration.
The end of humanity as a biological species, and the beginning of something else, something post-human, something hybrid, something that's no longer made in the image of God. And that's the ultimate goal of transhumanism, not to enhance humanity, to replace it, to merge biology with technology until there's no distinction. And the tech leaders are open about this. Ray Kurzweil, Google's director of engineering, predicts the singularity by 2045, the moment when AI surpasses human intelligence and begins improving itself exponentially. He believes humans will merge with machines to keep up. He believes consciousness will be uploadable. He believes death will be optional. And he's not alone. Every major tech company is investing in life extension, neural interfaces, genetic editing, and AI augmentation. And they're not doing it to help people, they're doing it to create the next stage of evolution, a stage where biology is obsolete, where flesh is a limitation, where humanity is a memory. And the prophecy describes this. It describes the mark. It describes the transformation. It describes the point of no return. And it warns that those who take it will face eternal consequences. Not because God is cruel, but because once you cease to be human, once you integrate with the beast, once you become part of the system, you are no longer redeemable. You are no longer you. And this is not speculation, this is happening. In 2023, CRISPR gene editing technology was used to modify human embryos in China. The goal was to eliminate genetic diseases, but the same technology can be used to enhance intelligence, strength, lifespan. It can be used to create designer humans. It can be used to integrate synthetic DNA. It can be used to merge biology with nanotechnology. And once that line is crossed, there's no going back. Because you can't unedit a genome. You can't remove what's been integrated. And if the mark involves genetic modification, if it involves neural augmentation, if it involves uploading consciousness into a digital substrate, then it's not just a choice, it's a transformation. And the prophecy says those who take it will be marked forever, and they will worship the beast, not because they're forced, because they've become part of it. And here's where the timeline accelerates, because we're not in the early stages anymore, we're in the final stages. The infrastructure is built, the technology is deployed, the adoption is happening, and the only thing missing is the catalyst, the event that makes the system mandatory, the crisis that justifies total control. And that crisis is coming. It could be economic collapse. It could be a cyber attack. It could be a pandemic. It could be war. It could be climate disaster. It could be all of them at once. And when it happens, governments will offer a solution. And the solution will be centralization, digital identity, universal surveillance, AI governance, central bank digital currencies. And people will accept it, not because they want it, because they need it. Because survival will depend on it. And once the system is activated, there's no turning it off. Because turning it off means chaos, and chaos means death. So people will choose the system. They will choose compliance. They will choose the mark. And they will do it willingly, because the alternative will be unthinkable. And Revelation describes this moment. It describes a choice. Take the mark and live, refuse the mark, and die. And most people will choose life, not because they're evil, because they're human, because survival is instinct, and the system will make survival dependent on compliance, and those who refuse will be excluded. And exclusion will mean suffering, and most people will do anything to avoid suffering. And that's how the beast wins, not by force, by fear, by necessity, by making the alternative worse than submission. And once the majority complies, the minority becomes the enemy. They become the threat. They become the ones holding everyone back. And the system will justify their removal, not through violence, through isolation, through digital erasure, through economic starvation. And the people will support it because they'll believe it's necessary. They'll believe it's for the greater good. They'll believe the resistors are dangerous. And that's the final stage of the prophecy, when the whole world turns against those who refuse the mark, when compliance becomes morality, when resistance becomes sin, and when the image that speaks declares who lives and who dies. And we're watching it happen in real time, with real technology, with real systems, with real consequences. And most people don't see it. They see progress. They see innovation. They see efficiency. They see safety. They see the future. And they don't realize they're looking at the beast. Because the beast doesn't look like a monster. It looks like salvation. It looks like the solution to every problem. It looks like hope. And that's how prophecy works. It doesn't announce itself. It unfolds, slowly, gradually, piece by piece, until one day you wake up and realize you're already inside the system. And by then, it's too late to get out, because getting out means losing everything: your job, your money, your access, your identity, your life. And most people will choose to stay. They'll choose to comply. They'll choose the mark. And they'll tell themselves, it's fine. It's just a system. It's just technology. It's just progress. And the prophecy will be fulfilled. Not because people are evil, because they're human. And the beast knows exactly how to exploit that. And here's the part that no one wants to hear. The prophecy says this will happen. Not might happen, will happen. It's not a warning that can be heeded. It's a prediction of what is inevitable. Because the conditions for the beast are hardwired into human nature. The desire for security, the fear of chaos, the need for order, the willingness to submit to authority if authority promises safety. And every totalitarian system in history has exploited these instincts.
The Roman Empire, the Third Reich, the Soviet Union, Communist China, and now the digital beast. The difference is the digital beast is smarter. It's faster, it's more efficient, and it doesn't have the weaknesses of human dictators. It doesn't age, it doesn't die, it doesn't get overthrown. It simply executes. And once it's in control, there's no revolution, because revolution requires organization, and organization requires communication, and communication is monitored. And the moment dissent is detected, it's suppressed, not by soldiers, by code, by algorithms that flag, restrict, and erase before the dissent can spread. And that's the genius of the system. It doesn't wait for rebellion, it prevents it. It identifies patterns, it predicts behavior, it neutralizes threats before they materialize. And the people don't even know they're being controlled. They just know their posts aren't getting traction, their accounts are shadow banned, their reach is suppressed. And they assume it's the algorithm. And they're right, it is the algorithm. But the algorithm isn't neutral, it's programmed. And whoever controls the programming controls reality. And this brings us to the final piece, the number of the beast. Revelation 13 verse 18 says, "This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. And for 2,000 years, people have tried to decode it. They've added up the letters in names. They've looked for patterns in history. They've connected it to Nero, to the Pope, to barcodes, to credit cards, to microchips. And maybe all of those guesses were wrong. Or maybe they were all hints.
Because 666 isn't just a number, it's a pattern. In Hebrew numerology, 6 is the number of man. Man was created on the sixth day. 6 represents incompleteness, imperfection, humanity without God. And 666 is the repetition of that incompleteness 3 times. The Trinity of man. Man trying to be God. Man creating his own system. Man building his own salvation. And that's exactly what transhumanism is. It's humanity trying to transcend itself without God, trying to become immortal through technology, trying to achieve divinity through code. And the number 666 represents that futility, the attempt, the striving, the failure. Because no matter how advanced the system becomes, it's still built by man. And man is 6, not 7, not complete, not divine, just human, flawed, finite, fallen. And maybe the number isn't literal. Maybe it's symbolic. Maybe it represents the system itself. A system built by human hands. A system that promises everything but delivers enslavement. A system that looks like salvation but ends in destruction. And the prophecy says those who have wisdom will understand. And maybe wisdom is recognizing that the system, no matter how advanced, is still just 6. It's still just human. It's still just incomplete. And no amount of technology can change that. Because the problem isn't lack of intelligence. The problem is separation from God. And AI doesn't solve it.
Neural augmentation doesn't solve that. Genetic editing doesn't solve that. Digital immortality doesn't solve that. It just perpetuates the problem. It just extends the brokenness. It just makes the incompleteness permanent. And that's the tragedy of the beast. It promises transcendence, but it delivers damnation. And this is where the prophecy becomes personal. Because it's not just about systems, it's about choices. Every person will face a decision. Take the mark or refuse it. Integrate into the system or stand outside it. Comply or resist. And the cost of resistance will be everything. Your job, your savings, your home, your family, your life. And most people will not be strong enough. Most people will rationalize. They'll say it's just a number, just a scan, just a chip, just a convenience. It doesn't mean anything. It's not worship. It's just survival. And they'll take the mark, and they'll integrate into the system. And the prophecy says they will be marked forever, and there will be no turning back. And that's the horror. Not that people will be forced, but that they will choose. They will choose comfort over conviction. They will choose security over sovereignty. They will choose the system over the Savior. And once they choose, it's done. Because the mark isn't just external, it's internal. It changes you. It marks your soul. And the prophecy says those who take it will face the wrath of God. Undiluted, unmitigated, eternal. And people read that and think, God is cruel. But maybe it's not cruelty. Maybe it's consequence. Because the mark represents a final choice, a permanent rejection, a decision to side with the beast over the Creator. And if you choose the beast, if you integrate into the system, if you allow yourself to be transformed into something other than human, then you've chosen separation from God. And God honors that choice, not because He doesn't love you, but because love requires freedom, and freedom requires the ability to choose wrongly. And the mark is the ultimate wrong choice. It's the choice to reject your humanity, to reject your Creator, to reject redemption. And once that choice is made, there's nothing left to redeem, because you've become part of the system, and the system is the enemy of God. And this is the urgency of the prophecy, because we're not talking about distant future, we're talking now. The technology exists, the infrastructure is operational, the adoption is accelerating, and the only question is when the final pieces fall into place.
when the crisis comes, when the choice becomes unavoidable. And that moment is closer than most people realize. Because the world is fracturing, economically, politically, socially, spiritually. The old systems are failing, the institutions are collapsing, the certainties are dissolving, and people are desperate for answers, desperate for solutions, desperate for someone to fix it. And when the beast offers that solution, when the system promises order out of chaos, when the image speaks with authority and confidence,
people will listen, they will believe, they will comply, because the alternative is chaos. And humans fear chaos more than they fear tyranny. And here's the final warning. The prophecy says the beast will only rule for 42 months, 3.5 years, and then it ends. But how it ends is catastrophic. Revelation describes plagues, judgments, destruction, the collapse of the system, the fall of Babylon, the return of Christ, the final battle. And the beast is thrown into the lake of fire. And those who took the mark are destroyed with it. No second chance, no appeal, no mercy, just judgment. And people say that's harsh. People say that's unfair. But the prophecy is clear. The mark is final. It's not ignorance. It's not coercion. It's a choice made with full knowledge. Because by the time the mark is implemented, the world will know what it represents. The system will be visible. The control will be obvious. The nature of the beast will be undeniable. And those who take the mark will do so knowing what they're choosing. They'll choose it anyway, because they'll value survival over salvation. And that choice has consequences. And maybe that's the most terrifying part of the prophecy. Not that it describes a system of control, but that it describes human nature. It describes how easily people surrender, how quickly they comply, how willingly they submit. When the stakes are survival, when the pressure is high, when the alternative is suffering. And the prophecy says most people will fail the test. Most people will take the mark. Most people will integrate into the system. Not because they're evil, because they're weak, because they're human. And the beast knows how to exploit that. And the only ones who resist are those whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. Those who have something stronger than survival instinct. Those who have faith. Those who have hope. Those who believe there's something more valuable than this life. And those people will refuse. And they will suffer. And many of them will die. But the prophecy says they will be saved. Not from suffering, from damnation. Because they chose God over the system. They chose eternity over convenience. They chose faith over fear. And that's the message of Revelation 13. It's not just a warning about the future. It's a test of allegiance. It's a question everyone will have to answer. Who do you serve? The system or the Savior? The beast or the Creator? Survival or eternity? And the answer you give will determine everything, not just your life, your soul. And the prophecy says the time is coming when that choice will be unavoidable, when everyone will face it, when neutrality will be impossible, when you'll either take the mark or refuse it, and there will be no middle ground, no compromise, no gray area, just two paths, and one leads to life, and the other leads to destruction. And the prophecy says most people will choose the wrong path, not because they want to, because they're afraid, because the cost of the right path is too high, because they love this world more than the next. And we're watching the setup in real time. Every piece of the prophecy is aligning. The technology, the infrastructure, the global chaos, the centralization of power, the rise of AI, the digital economy, the surveillance state, the biometric identification, the social credit systems, the deplatforming, the censorship, the exclusion, the control. It's all here. It's all operational, and it's accelerating. And most people don't see it. They see innovation.
They see progress. They see the future. And they don't realize they're looking at the beast. Because the beast doesn't announce itself. It integrates. Slowly, quietly, inevitably. Until one day the system is complete. And the choice is binary. Comply or die. And by then, most people will have already chosen. They'll have already integrated. They'll have already accepted the convenience, the security, the efficiency, and they won't even realize they've taken the mark. Until it's too late. Until the judgment comes. Until the system collapses. And then they'll understand. But understanding won't save them, because the choice was already made. And that's the brilliance and the horror of Revelation 13. It describes a system so subtle, so integrated, so normalized that people don't recognize it as evil. They recognize it as necessary, as inevitable, as progress. And by the time they realize what it actually is, they're already inside it, already dependent on it, already marked by it, and there's no way out. Because the system is total, and the beast is patient, and the image speaks with authority, and the mark is permanent, and the prophecy unfolds exactly as written, not because God forces it, but because humanity chooses it, over and over, throughout history. The same pattern, the same temptation, the same failure. Humans trying to build heaven on earth without God. Humans trying to transcend their limitations through their own power. Humans trying to become gods through knowledge, through technology, through systems. And every time, it ends the same way. Chaos, collapse, judgment. And the prophecy says the final attempt will be the most sophisticated, the most seductive, the most complete. And it will deceive almost everyone, except those whose names are written in the book of life. And maybe that's the question you need to ask yourself. Not whether the prophecy is real, not whether the technology matches, not whether the timeline is correct, but whether your name is in that book, whether you're prepared for the choice, whether you're willing to lose everything to refuse the mark, because that's what it will cost. Everything. Your comfort, your security, your access, your life. And the only reason to pay that cost is if you believe there's something more valuable on the other side. If you believe eternity is real. If you believe judgment is real. If you believe God is real.
Real. And if you don't believe those things, then the choice is easy. Take the mark, integrate into the system, survive as long as you can, and hope the prophecy is wrong. But if you do believe, if you know deep in your soul that the prophecy is true, that the beast is rising, that the mark is coming, that the choice is unavoidable, then you have to decide now. Not when the crisis hits, not when the pressure is unbearable, not when the alternative is death. Now. Because by the time the mark is implemented, the decision will already be made. Your habits will decide, your dependencies will decide, your compromises will decide. And if you're already integrated into the system, if you're already dependent on digital identity, digital currency, digital access, then when the final step comes, you'll take it, because you'll have no choice, because you've already been conditioned, already been prepared, already been marked, even if you don't have the physical mark yet. And this is where the prophecy becomes a mirror, because it's not just describing the world, it's describing you, your choices, your compromises, your dependencies, your fears. And it's asking, what will you do when the moment comes? When the system demands compliance? When the alternative is exclusion? When the cost is everything? Will you stand or will you kneel? Will you refuse or will you rationalize? Will you choose God or will you choose survival? And the prophecy says, most people will choose survival, and they will regret it for eternity. Because survival in the system is damnation, and death outside the system is salvation. And that inversion is the final test, the ultimate question, the choice that defines everything. And the beast of silicon, the image that speaks, the mark of compliance, The system of total control is not coming. It's here. It's operational. It's expanding. And the only question left is, what will you do when it demands your worship?